Good afternoon, dear colleagues and maybe guests. Let me declare open a session of the Dissertation Council for the defense of thesis by Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich for the degree of Candidate of Political Science, Scientific Specialty 230002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technology, on the theme Political Manipulation of the Internet as a Threat to Information Security. Let me announce the first technical break. The first technical break is over. Let us continue our session. The order of Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University, Gniotov Alexander Valentinovich, dated the 15th of April 2021, order number 3301/1, me, Vasilieva Natalia Alexeyevna, Doctor of Philosophy, Professor of the World Politics Department of St. Petersburg University, was appointed Chairman of this Dissertation Council. Other members of the Dissertation Council were appointed by the same order. Let me introduce them to you. Baranov Nikolai Alexeyevich, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the Political Institutions and Applied Political Research Department of St. Petersburg University. Labush Nikolai Sergeyevich, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the International Journalism Department of St. Petersburg University. Melnik Galina Sergeyevna, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the Digital Media Communications Department of St. Petersburg University. Shevchenko Alevtina Vladimirovna, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor, Head of the Department of Public Administration and National Security of the Russian Presidential Academy of National Economy and Public Administration. In the remote access mode, we have at this session Gregory John Simons, Doctor of Philology, Professor, Uppsala University, Sweden. Dr. Simons, can you see and hear us?
Yes, degree? I see and hear you clearly.
Fine.
No, you're welcome.
The degree applicant, Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich, is also present. Also at the session, the thesis supervisor, Kefil Igor Fyodorovich, Doctor of Philosophy, Professor, Honored Worker of Higher Education of the Russian Federation, Director of the Center for Geopolitical Expertise of the Northwestern Institute of Management of the Russian National Academy of Public Administration under the President of the Russian Federation. Let me also inform you that our session is being recorded and broadcast live at St. Petersburg University website. The speeches are being simultaneously translated from Russian into English or from English into Russian. This live broadcast stream of the Dissertation Council session currently shows an email address to which, during the session, all the listeners may send questions to the applicant or their opinions regarding the content of the thesis and the applicant's speech, the current scientific discussion, and thus participate in the scientific discussion. These questions shall be forwarded to me by our technical support department, and I shall read them during our discussion. Questions should be related strictly to the applicant's speech and the content of his thesis. It's also necessary to indicate full name, position, and place of employment of the author. Questions not related to the scientific discussion of the thesis, and assessment of the thesis, as well as anonymous questions, shall not be presented. In accordance with the order of awarding at St. Petersburg University the degree of Candidate of Sciences and Doctor of Sciences, approved by the local regulations of St. Petersburg University, hereinafter referred to as the order, a session of the Dissertation Council shall be considered competent if at least 5, but not less than 2/3 of the appointed council members are present, but not less than 4 persons. Our council consists of 6 members. All 6 are present, including 5 council members in offline mode. An audio-visual contact has been established with us. Thus, we have the necessary quorum. Let me ask the Dissertation Council Activity Support Department make up the attendance list. Let me set forth the following procedure of today's session of the Dissertation Council with the total duration of approximately 2 hours. First, summary report of the chairman about the applicant and the documents he submitted and their compliance with applicable regulation. Answers to possible questions, approximately 5 minutes. Second, a brief report of the applicant outlining the key findings of his study, approximately 15 minutes. Questions to the applicant strictly on his report, not more than 2 minutes for each question. Answers of the applicant, not more than 5 minutes for all questions. Speeches of all the council members in turn, with their assessment of the thesis and the applicant's speech, as well as their questions and suggestions to the degree applicant, approximately 10 minutes for each speaker. Speech of the chairman with his assessment of the thesis, approximately 10 minutes. The next, answers of the degree applicant to questions and remarks made by the council members, no more than 20 minutes. Open discussion. Speeches of the attendees at will with summaries of their opinions and or specific suggestions to the degree applicant, strictly on the theme of his research, no more than 2 minutes for each speaker. At that, all the speakers are kindly requested to register themselves and introduce themselves before speaking. 9. Presentation of questions to the applicant sent during the discussion of his thesis and the scientific discussion. As the session is being broadcast live at St. Petersburg University website. Let me inform you that written question, the presentation of which takes more than 2 minutes, shall not be presented. Next, answers of the applicant, no more than 2 minutes for each question. Speech of the academic advisor of the applicant, not more than 3 minutes. Discussion of the council members before voting of the defense results. For that period, sound shall be switched off. That should take approximately 5 minutes. Open individual voting, and the chairman shall count the votes and record the results in the minutes of the meeting. Making a decision on awarding or not awarding the degree to the applicant, and finally, closing remarks of the applicant, no more than 2 minutes. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions or objections to this procedure? No, we don't. If there are no questions, let's start our session. And first of all, please switch off your mobile phones. Dear colleagues, dear Thesis Council colleagues working in the remote access mode, please keep your telephone switched on so that we could reach you quickly in case of emergency. Thank you for your understanding. Thus, let's start the session. Summary report of the chairman. The thesis by Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich for the degree of candidate of political science, scientific specialty 230002, political institutions, processes and technology, on the theme political manipulation of the Internet as a threat to information security, was accepted for defense by the order of the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University on the 25th of March 2021, order number 2324/1. Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich wrote his thesis at Northwestern Institute of Management, branch of the Russian Presidential Academy of National Economy and Public Administration. Under his thesis supervisor was Doctor of Philosophy, Professor, Honored Worker of Higher Education of the Russian Federation, Director of the Center for Geopolitical Expertise in the Northwestern Institute of Management and Russian Presidential Academy, Igor Fedorovich Kefeli. The number of publications of the applicant which set forth the main scientific results of the thesis, according to the attached list, is 6. In journals, peer-reviewed journals from the list approved by the Ministry of Science and Education of Russian Federation, there are 6 publications. The applicant submitted to the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University a full set of documents to accept his thesis for consideration and defense. All the documents comply with Article 12 of the order. All the documents, according to the information I received from the curator, comply with the requirements and are kept in the applicant's attestation file. Copies are also available from the officer of the Dissertation Council Support Department, who is present at our session. Before I give the floor to the degree applicant, I have a question for the council members. Do you, dear council members, shall we ask the applicant to answer any questions. And is it necessary, among other things, to read the entire list of documents submitted by the applicant? No, there are no questions. Thank you. So, brief report of the applicant, approximately 15 minutes. Good afternoon, dear council members, dear chairman. The topic of my research is political manipulation in the internet space as a threat to the information security. The relevance of this topic is due to the following. One of the fundamental scientific problems currently being addressed is the development of theory and methodology of information security of the individual, society, and the state. It includes methods of counteracting destructive influences in the internet and ways of identifying the semantic content of the process of influence on the person, the mass consciousness, risks and damages caused by the negative consequence of the manipulation of consciousness. Problematic of the use of preventive measures to curb the information and political risks requires additional study. In modern political science, it's necessary to pay special attention to the manipulative possibilities on the internet. It should be noted that the issue of opponents for political manipulation on the internet requires additional public study. Manipulative techniques have been used in politics for many years. The object of my study is the phenomenon of political manipulation in the network environment. The source of is a threat to the information society. The purpose of my study is the formation of theoretical foundations and methods to counteract manipulative influence in the information and political space of the internet, the system of preventive actions to prevent threats and their occurring based on scenario modeling. In order to achieve this goal, the following tasks have been solved. Define the theoretical and methodological approaches to the concepts of political manipulation, information and political space of the internet, manipulation potential of the internet. To characterize the information risks and threats that pose a danger to the functioning of the political system of Russian Federation. To classify and systematize the signs of manipulative influence, features and nature of influence on the consumer in the political space of the internet. Describe models of information and political influence in the internet based on the study of manipulative media practices. Identifies the semantic content of manipulative texts in the information and political environment based on the case study. Develop a methodology of preventive counteraction as one of the areas of global information security. The methodological basis is as follows. The paper looks at political manipulation as an act of purposeful influence on political behavior of people through the manipulative capabilities of the internet, the structural function approach, case analysis, and content analysis. The study shown in Chapter 1, the most important component of the national security is political security, considered as an independent element only since the end of the 20th century. All the main approaches to its definition, the information factor is given insufficient attention, though is becoming more important with the development of the information society, since information has a potential to create a number of risks and threats to the political stability of the society. Considering the various views of this, the commentaries such as putting together also different types of security, in the threats, this continuous interaction, the increasing importance of non-military threats to the system of national security, the philosophical methodological understanding of the need to introduce the concept of information technology as an essential element of the structure of national security, recognition of information as the basis for the information, fundamentally new risks and threats makes it possible to introduce the concept of information political threat, as well as to specify the concept of information political security. Each include all information belonging to the category of political information. Political actors, institutions, and citizens interact in the information space. The latter allows to improve the synergy of a huge number of participants and make it possible to instantly give a private the format of the universal. This makes it possible to turn what has local significance to global events in the shortest possible time, depending on the goals pursued by the participants of information interaction and methods of political manipulation used. They form the basis of the two main models of political manipulation, rational and psychological. Equally numerous are technologies of information and political manipulation related to the scale of application and the situations in which it is used. The possibilities of technologies and methods of political manipulation are increasing dramatically. Chapter 2 discusses the principles of political manipulation, models of information, and political influence on the Internet. A broad capability allow implementation of all the principles discussed. They can be used as the basis for mobilization and other possible influences in terms of public policy, as well as manipulation to destroy or destabilize the political system and other important subsystems of the modern state. The information political risks and threats are developing process of using methods of political manipulation. Their goal is to create the objects of manipulation, the necessary views on the socio-political development of the country. The basis for modeling is the theory of scenarios, is a logically connected sequence. This theory makes it possible to identify the specific options for development of information and political risks and threats. The main types of scenarios include the following: verbal, frame, fans of variants, information significant models. The models of information political manipulation developed on the basis of scenario approach make it possible to determine the size of manipulation before significant damage is done to the social and political structure of the state and to adequately counteract it. In Chapter 3, we conducted an analysis of media sources devoted to vaccination in Russia and in particular to Sputnik V vaccine. The analysis showed a varying tone of evaluations of the publications reviewed and also allowed us to identify manipulative techniques such as agitation, indoctrination, propaganda, misleading, persuasion, information overload, dosage of information, avoiding discussion. Also, research in Chapter 3 led to the following conclusions. The ability of the Internet to implement organizational and technical principles of political manipulation lies in the active response to significant events in the political life of the country. One of the basic principles of influence any structure in order to inflict the maximum damage at minimum cost is the principle of structural defeat. It consists of a priority impact on the information critical elements of the political system. Discusses from the realistic approach. Though the author does not deny the opportunity of the Internet to provide various information which enable the most relevant issues of today and develop its own understanding of the Internet. As a result, we obtained a number of significant results, as not only the author's understanding of the security of but looked at some serious components of this concept. The work analyzes technology of manipulation, it demonstrates the capacity, the cases of its use, its possible use, and these technologies is real threats to the stability of the society that emerge in the use of the information. The information risks and threats developed in time and space of different ways of political manipulation. Modeling such processes is based on the scenario theory. The proposed method of political impact includes the advantages of verbal, non-verbal scenarios, frame, and other methods, such as the structure of political threat, critical of the information impact. The mechanism of counteraction include objects, threads, their sources and spheres of application, principles of the algorithm of counteraction, and risk criteria, resources and tools of counteraction. The key elements of our algorithm of the time of the political identified while monitoring the information space characterized political processes. When identifying the information features of manipulation, making a conclusion on counteraction actions and forecasts on the use of interaction technology. During this study, we obtained the following results. Propose a method, a scenario modeling, which allows to develop ways to prevent the information political threats on the internet, reduce risks. Recommendations for strengthening protection of personal data. Concepts disclosing the content process ensure information political security on the internet were proposed. Political manipulation, information, political internet space, and manipulative potential of the internet. These can be successfully used to improve the information legislation because this is an important direction for increasing effectiveness of the counter mechanisms. The conclusions obtained in the course of the study are as follows. Priorities of the information space: a high degree of structured, high potential accessibility coverage, and information equality, as well as high technology of information space. Dynamics of semantic content and spatial development. It has been found that these properties determine and contribute to the build-up of the potential for political manipulation. Risk is a subjective expression of objective factors that pose a threat to actors and therefore increases significantly under condition of information uncertainty. The main purpose of exercising such influence through political manipulation is to control the society. Risk assessment is an assessment of likelihood of certain negative consequences. If risk factors come with a sense of threat, they are eliminated. At the same time, objective factors that can lead to political transformation remain. The most dangerous ones are unforeseen factors where risk of occurrence cannot be predicted. The core method of information political manipulation is the formation of information content. Thanks to the development of info communication structures, delivery of such information acquires global character. This creates objective prerequisites for increasing the effectiveness of individual methods of political manipulation and various manipulation technologies. Modeling of information political impact on the internet are operational and temporal scenarios built on the basis of model blocks. The implementation of such blocks is based on the information features of the main elements of information political threats at various stages of its development. The results and conclusions obtained can be used by the public authorities of the Russian Federation while developing the state information policy, as well as in the regulation of the internet by authorities and the local government when developing planned measures to prevent information and political threats, as well as in predicting the political behavior of Russian citizens. They can also be applied in the instruction process of teaching disciplines such as political science, political processes, public administration and national security, state and municipal administration, and others related to the problem of the national security in the modern information space. The reliability of results achieved in the study is ensured by working with a large number of domestic and foreign sources. The logical and theoretical material is thoroughly searched. In-depth analysis of a wide range of empirical material was carried out. At the 9th Moscow Conference on Information Security on the 24th of June 2021, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the following: today, a serious talk is needed about an updated, inclusive global security architecture that meets today's multipolar realities. Thank you for your attention. Do we have questions to the degree applicant strictly related to his report on his key findings or the content of his thesis? Each question should not take more than 2 minutes. I have a question, please. Viktor Vladimirovich, is introducing the category of the threat to strengthen the public control of the internet, and where, in your opinion, is this border between the state usurping freedom of the and rights of its citizens and control of the information space in the framework of security? Thank you very much for such an interesting question. I think our entire society is concerned about the manipulation problem and information security, which is a national security issue. But as for the legislation, the Russian internet is regulated by Russian legislation concepts that I have discussed in my study. That is why we only, let me just say that we propose to the legislators such as the Constitutional Court, the government, our great president, what laws should be introduced. Thank you once again for such an excellent question. I think this question has great value. Let me say, does anything depend on the people? Does anything depend on the citizens? Of course, a lot depends on the citizens. Well, the citizens are the key participants of political processes because they elect the president, they vote for the constitution, they have the right to elect. So they are active participants of all the political processes. So, of course, a lot depends on them. Thank you.
No questions?
Let me ask a similar question. We usually talk about political manipulation in relation to the government, and we usually assign this role to the opposition. Can such manipulation be performed by the government forces as action or counteractions? Thank you for this. Yes, we're all interested. Yes, there is the power and some individuals who position themselves as enemies. But we look at threats and risks of the information security, and we will continue to deal. And so I devoted lots of attention to this in my articles. So we will talk about that. We will continue discussing this. Viktor Vladimirovich, I have one more question, also similar. I asked it in my review, but since we are discussing this, you said that you conducted you introduced new terms related to the information security. How can you legally introduce these terms? So, I mean, you mean legal techniques, or you set out new terms, or is it something different? Thank you. Dear Natalia Alexeyevna, thank you very much for such an interesting. Of course, the legal component is very important and very interesting. And I agree that the legal is in legal acts, and I understand this function belongs to the legislators. Of course, free researchers do not have such a function, but introducing in scientific circulation, which later on page 157, I said that definitions can be used to improve the information legislation, because that's an important sphere to improve the mechanism of counteraction to political threats and risks. Obviously, these theses should be set forth. New terms is so just set with the use of legal practice. Thank you. So thank you very much for this question. I think that we need to continue working, and since this issue is so important and is of strategic importance. Do we have more questions? Simon, maybe you have a question. Do you have a question? Any questions, Dr. Simons?
Yes, actually, I do have a question. What has been mostly discussed is, or are human actors, either as something attacking or defending this internet information security. But what about the threat of artificial intelligence and machine-based learning? So that is not directly human, but perhaps controlled by humans.
Mr. Simon, so thank you for your question. So this is a great task. So my aim is the formation of theoretical foundation and methods to counteract the multiple influence in the information and political space of the internet, the system of preventive measures to prevent threats and their curing based on the scenario modeling. In order to achieve this, the following objects are being pursued. Identify theoretical methodological approaches to explaining the concepts of political manipulation, the information political space of the internet, and the potential of the internet. To characterize the informational risk and threats to pose to danger to the function of the political system of Russian society. Classify systematic to sign of multiple influence, the characteristics and nature of the influence on consumers in political space or the internet. Describe models of information political influence on the internet based on the study of manipulative media practices. Identify the systematic content of multiple texts in informational political environment based on a case study of a political event. Develop a methodology of preventing, counteracting multiple influences on the internet as one of the areas of global informational security. Thank you for your attention. So your question is very important. So we are discussing the vital problem for Russia and the world. And so thank you for your question. So we might write more scientific works, and they're all important. So this is a big field to discuss and discover. Thank you very much, Mr. Simon.
Спасибо, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more questions? I see we have no more questions. Let us proceed to the next part of our session. These are speeches of the Dissertation Council. They are reviews and assessment of the thesis, and speech of the applicant with suggestions to the applicant, and external reviews. External reviews shall be presented by the chairman. Would you like to answer all questions after answer each reviewer individually? Have we received any external reviews? No, we haven't. In that case, let us proceed to speeches of the council members. All the reviews have been published at the university website. So I suggest the reviewers present only the key points, questions, and critical remarks to the applicant. Do you have any objections to that? No. Thank you. Let us move on to the presentation of reviews. Baranov Nikolai Alexeyevich. Thank you. Indeed, the topic we are discussing today is extremely relevant, and we cannot but agree that the information security is getting more importance because political security guarantees security of the state. The thesis is first of all characterized to the unique approach and security of the individual as political system, of the political system. Scientific novelty, I would like to emphasize, first of all, the description of the new model of influences, of the new model which can easily adapt to the changes, and the use of such blocks as the elements of political structure, assessment of the current state of the information impact, the structure of political threat, the time and operational model of the impact, and practice of recommendations to develop the state security policy to protect the citizens from the threats of network media. During this study, the author obtained new theoretical material that allowed the author to solve the tasks and provide the theoretical foundations how to counteract the system of preventive measures to prevent threats and mitigation of damage on the basis of, with the help of modeling. I think the work has many advantages. Still, I would like to draw attention to some minor drawbacks and give some recommendations. The second provision says, the author says about objective factors, but never lists them. Second, on page 66, the author speaks about Guterov's work, which postulates as destructive impact on the individual and public consciousness, but such brief definition does not define the technology of impact. It would be desirable to consider this concept in more detail, since it's extremely significant. 3. You use the system approach. At the same time, you're using some legal terms. So I would recommend, because of that, to use the terms of political science, which, within the framework of the political system, have the political and information subsystem, which includes the relations between the different actors of the political process, dedicated to some communication channels. And it would be advisable to characterize this system. And 4, the author has never the choice of content analysis that include Russian newspapers and information agencies, as well as American newspapers. 5, the work has some questionable expressions, turning into the population into a crowd. This is achieved with page 134. Without reference, this is the author's opinion about functioning of the civil society, which is fairly questionable. And finally, the author talks about advisable monitoring of the internet space using specialized analytical and information systems that can monitor mass media, conduct media analysis in the real-time mode. In that case, we can use the practice Prisma, Glass, and other systems. Yet, these drawbacks have no significant impact on the quality and are only wishes for further research and do not affect the overall quality of the paper. The thesis by Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich, political manipulation of the internet as a threat to the information security, complies with the main requirements set at St. Petersburg University, and the degree applicant deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of political sciences, special 230002, political institutions, processes and technologies. Article 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order has not been violated. Thank you. Thank you very much. So what can I say? Thank you very much for a kind review and critical remarks. And considering your critical remarks, let me say that for objective factors as threats, these objectively existing threats, combination of internal and external factors that can cause significant changes in lifestyle and values. According to your recommendation to explore the technology of fake news and post-truth. This was not the task of my research, but I will certainly consider that in my further research studies. The choice of mass media is explained by high number of quotes, mediology, statistics, and news about vaccines, Sputnik V. The Russian newspaper is used as an official source with which we have compared the unofficial sources. To continue my work, I will certainly consider your recommendations regarding your recommendation to study the analytical agencies such as Prisma, Glass, and others. Thank you very much. What else can I say about post-truth? Is in the events of 100 and there's about political post-truth, where use the emotions and neglect facts. With post-truth, the result of presidential elections and the Brexit in the UK, post-truth means that when forming the public opinion, objective factors become less significant than those touching emotions. Fact is secondary. And emotions take over. So humans ignore the facts. So post-truth feeds the existing stereotypes. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you. Thank you. Greg Salmon, maybe you will present your review.
Yes, thanks. So I read the thesis with great interest. It's very systematic. It comes in a very logical and understandable format. It builds progressively. There is a very good mixture of Russian and international sources, so it is able to look at both worlds, so to speak, and this gives a very good overview. There is also not a separation of theory from empirical observation. Some of the previous theses I've read have this separation. This one does not. So the content, the data is put in a theoretical context, which is encouraging to see. I would offer some minor suggestions to improve things a little bit more in terms of its value in terms of analyzing this kind of material, because I noted at some points, and this I think has been raised by the previous member, and that was the issue of context is sometimes not as clearly put as it should be. And this could be done through things such as using these approaches, such as dividing the human world into the physical, informational, and cognitive realm. I mean, what you're dealing with here in your thesis is mainly to deal with the informational and the cognitive realms. So this is within, broadly speaking, this information warfare, which would be applicable given what you're trying to do with your thesis. And it would have been great to see if there were more overt use of specific cases involving the role and negative influence of external actors in the Russian information space, and especially this digital information space, because this has certainly been taking place. I mean, it was definitely noticeable in recent years. I would add just one last thing, and that is what to question and perhaps put into the context why this interference, this obstruction, is taking place within the internet. And this can be seen in a couple of contexts. One is that this mobilization is gradually shifting from offline mobilization and manipulation to online mobilization and manipulation, which is cheaper, more instantaneous. It's not constrained by time and space in such benefits. And in some cases, it can be somewhat more effective in a quick mobilization. If we look at the colored revolutions, for example, or Arab Spring as an illustration of this. And the second point is that there is a transforming global order. So we're going from a Western-centric, US-led global world order towards a more multipolar, non-Western-centric order. And when a hegemonic power loses its influence, it will not give up its influence and its power willingly. So this can be put into it. I mean, one can see what's happening, for example, in Syria and the Black Sea and other case studies to illustrate this point. But in all, I think that this is a very significant piece of academic work and knowledge, which is on a very topical theme at the moment, and this will remain topical for some time. I would perhaps like to see from the candidate how he would envisage how his work is contributing to the wider academic study, not only in Russia, but beyond Russia, because this is, as has been noted, a very important and actual theme in the current situation that the world is in at the moment due to technology and to changes, political and geopolitical. In all, I think the dissertation meets the basic requirements established by Order 6821-1 of 1st September 2016, and the candidate, Borschenko, deserves the award of scientific degree of candidate of political sciences in the speciality 23.00.02, political institutions, processes and technology. Clause 11 of the aforementioned order by the author of the thesis is not broken. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon, for your report. So it was very interesting to listen to it. There's a lot to discover. So I have to underline that the main purpose of the existing influence through political manipulation is control. That is done by using information and physical influence on the participants in the political process by influencing and motivating sphere using internet and modern technologies, which intends correcting the political behavior on the target. Political manipulation in the information sphere was formed as a response to the demands of new social norms. With the emergence of industrial society and the development of the internet, political manipulation has become a socially significant phenomenon. The cumulative effective influence of various orientation is a manipulation action. The state, society, and individual themselves are the main actors in the system of political manipulation, as you had noted. The objectives, factors that act as a hazard. When the likelihood of these factors materialize increase, there is a risk which is subjectively perceived as a threat. And as you told us that we face this situation in Syria, so the Arab Spring, all this. I myself, I visited Egypt for 5 times, so I have I've seen everything with my own eyes. So I can say that is very important that the influence of internet on people is on high level, because we live in a society on internet. Every kid, every grown-up, they all have mobile devices, computers. So internet is for more than 10 years in the pocket of every person in our society. So this is very important. So I have to admit that additional opportunities for creating both internal and external threats are created by properties of modern informational space, the prerequisites for violating the country's information sovereignty through various kinds of manipulation of informational content are created by the formation and development of the global informational space. Information and political manipulation methods are based on the formation and position of informational content. Thanks to the development of communication structures, the delivery of modified information has become global. This creates objective perspectives for increasing the effectiveness of individual methods of political manipulation and various manipulation technologies, as you mentioned as well. Models of informational political impacts on the Internet, operational and temporary scenario built on the basis of model blocks. The implementation of these blocks is based on the informational attribute of main elements of the information political threats during the stages of the emergence and development. The practical significance. So, the results and conclusions obtained in the dissertation can be used by public authorities of Russian Federation in the development of the state informational policy, as well in the field of international regulation, by authorities and local governments in the development of planned measures to prevent information and political threats, in the monitoring of media resources that use technologies of multiple and destructive influence on audience, and in predicting the political behavior of Russian citizens as well as citizens all over the world. They can also be used in the teaching process of sector of disciplines such as political science, political process, organization, technology, state and municipal governments, public administration, and national security. So thank you very much for your attention. So I highly value your attitude. So I think that Russian scientists should work and in this field and reach more goals. So this is a very important scientific field. Thank you very much, Mr. Simon. Sorry for we don't have today the interpreters, but we try to improve and to solve this problem. So sorry and thank you very much, Mr. Simon.
Спасибо. Теперь мы переходим к следующему.
Thank you. Let's proceed to the next reviewer, Labush. Let me start in the beginning. I'd like to start with the relevance of the topic. As the author modestly states in paragraph 1.3, he says the political manipulation on the internet is a threat not only to the information but to the other components of the national, international security. The work is creative, original, and this is evidenced by the tasks, but the solutions creates some critical remarks and suggestions, calls for some critical remarks as well as a positive attitude. Well, the positive, strong points have already been mentioned by my colleagues earlier, and the chairman of our council mentioned the need to focus on the problems that and give some hints to the author. So maybe we will focus on that. So we know what to tell to the applicant. The author has lots of novelty, 9 provisions. Maybe the provisions that seen but are not. Some provisions are original, or maybe from the point of approach or presentation of material are new for the scientific community, but at the same time the novel approach, different aspects of the phenomena under study, formal and a number of drawbacks. So for formal drawbacks include grammar mistakes, style mistakes, and quotation marks without referencing, or quotation marks without necessity, such as bad word. And for example, page 136, the definition of the mechanism of counteraction, they use the elements of different. As for the my critical remarks, it's necessary to clarify the position of the author of some, for example, on page 2022, the author reviews manipulation methods and starts talking about personnel management, and then the author uses methods that he found in an e-library as methods to influence, and then he characterizes political manipulation such as deceit, propaganda, agitation, and even terrorism. And I think here the author mixes up, but in the table on the same page shows the methods where the list, so it's maybe the author's position. Characteristic of some methods, for example, demoralization, the author describes as weakening the critical feeling in decision makers, their demoralization, and in information aimed at presenting the facts that will allow people to. So the same is true about argumentation. The author proposes a number of complex and even discussion problems. For example, the author states the unilateral impact of the internet, the list of sources of internal information threats, but the author is talking about international some personalities that are threats. The same is true about the system analysis of manipulation technology. Here, I think it's necessary to look at a wider scope instead of looking only at methods and audiences. Specific of the author's style is that a major part is too brief. The author manages to include lots of material. On the other hand, some propositions that require additional explanation have not been explained properly. So maybe because of huge knowledge accumulated by the author is trying to cover the impossible. The scope of problems is too wide, so he only he touches upon some problems very briefly. And to cover the theoretical problems, the author maybe does not have sufficient methodological experience. In a number of cases, some provisions call for explanation, especially, for example, when the author says the explicit features, he says they depend on the function, and then he lists the functions. And the functions are quite original, but they need to be defined, such as actualizing a geopolitical function, communicative function, etc. The same is true about when the author talks about technology of scenario modeling, which, according to the author, is implementation of modal blocks. He calls these blocks, but it's necessary because this definition calls for explanation. What does it mean to implement a modal block? One block is structure, the other block is definition, and the third one is assessment. How can these blocks be implemented? Judging by the nature, Viktor Vladimirovich has been working on this issue for a long time, and maybe because of that, some of the advantages turn into disadvantages and vice versa. For example, the work has 150 pages, and he made almost 250 references, though some references are unnecessary. Another thing, the study includes several tables and diagrams which are quite interesting. But for example, figure 1 is not commented by the author, and there are questions about the use of in table 3. So these my remarks and recommendations do not affect the quality of the work, but demonstrate the scope of the author's vision and the opportunity to improve these points in the future works of the author. The creative nature, the author doesn't claim to give us the truth he agrees that information security, political security, the concept depends on the political position of the author and is a concentrated expression of his views. That does not mean there are no contraction points in the possibility which the author demonstrates in his work. The thesis by Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich on political manipulation in the internet space is the threat to the information security corresponds to the basic requirements set by the order on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, and the degree applicant Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of political sciences, specialty 230002. Articles 9 and 11 of the above-mentioned order has not been violated. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I was very happy to hear you have nice voice. Thank you for your recommendations. Methodological approaches of the analysis of the materials are very useful. They will certainly be used in all further research and scientific works. The modern means of communication are really interactive. While I agree with your comment, I think it is necessary to clarify that we are thinking about political manipulation where the subjects are opinion leaders and influential political figures. Large political structures, the bearers of an ideology or system of ideas. Manipulation does not refer to a momentary situation where a specific person can influence it, but a massive, purposeful program influence where there's no need to talk seriously about feedback. The opinion of the audience, of course, can be taken into account, but not in the case of harsh propaganda campaign, where people find difficult to resist. In your review, you write that the completeness and accuracy of the list of sources of external information and political threats is questionable. It's unlikely that such a comprehensive list is possible. The threats arise all the time, as evidenced, for example, by the speeches of ministers of defense and foreign ministers of major nations at the recent International Conference on Global Security in Moscow in June. In order to respond adequately to these threats, of course, we need to identify them and assess their degree of danger. I agree with you, but I think that it's unlikely to be a feasible task for a single study. I agree that a systematic analysis of political manipulation implies a wide range of phenomena, processes, and this also requires more research. It's hardly possible to describe all technologies of political manipulation in the framework of one dissertation, which would lead to going beyond the set goals and objectives of the study. Let's move on, which is also very important, about the models. Of course, no model can be perfect and universal, applicable to absolutely all situations. But the adaptive model proposed takes into account multiple factors which work well in certain spatial and temporal conditions. Counteracting the destructive phenomena in the political sphere, it's important to take into account all the selected model blocks and their interrelation. The model is built on the basis of a study of a large number of typical data situations obtained as a result of our own research and numerous studies in humanities. Each model must be consistently implemented in the process of finding a solution to the conflict. One of the blocks is structure and the other is definition or assessment. This definition means that first one must understand the structure of phenomena, then provide a definition, designate it, and then assess it and propose a solution to the problem of counteraction. Thank you for your attention. I think we can work more. I think this is, every year there are conferences on security and the question of internet. So this issue is extremely important and we can work on it a lot. And that's good. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. Now let's give the floor to Galina Sergeyevna. Dear colleagues, let me once again emphasize the relevance of the work. The impact of information technology today is enormous, is explained by the global dissemination and the impact, the scope of impact. The conference, which was conducted at the highest level, was attended by defense minister and foreign ministers of the major states. So we understand the level of such threats not only in the information sphere, but in the national sphere of each state. We understand that the geopolitical situation is changing and strategies, and we are rethinking so the work is extremely relevant. Novelty has already been mentioned, is in a proposed approach to threat detection counteraction. The author proposed a complex of scientifically justified and practice-oriented recommendations to protect citizens from destructive manipulative impacts of novelty is also reflected in the modal description, which has already been of the information political impacts on the internet, which is highly adaptive and can be applied to some spatial and time parameters. Also, I'd like to pay the attention to the empirical basis along with the results of social studies. The author, it includes publications by the leading international journals, major information agencies, and of course Российская газета, with which the materials are compared. And the choice of the object of research is that the media technology is used not only within the framework but of the political relations. It seems to me that through political science of the socially structured security, the author discussed as protection of values, interests of the state and the society. The author dealt with some complex issues, not only theoretical approaches, but quite a number of them, as political manipulation, potential, characterized the threats that are to functioning of the political system of the Russian society, classified the features of especially the nature of influence. This described models on the basis of case analysis, identified content of manipulative text in the information political sphere, developed a method of preventive counteraction on the internet. I will not talk about each chapter. Each chapter has key points. Indeed, what is really of interest is the modal construction method that includes advantages of the verbal scenarios. We have discussed in detail in the introduction. The thesis is well visualized into different types of security, and demonstrates the nature of damage, the different types of information resulting from different types of information. And there are other advantages such as monitoring of social media and integral number of social data used as works based on reliable sources, and of course the results have not only theoretical but practical value. All the provisions are well justified by the author. All the hypotheses have been proved. So my remarks are mostly points for discussion, and some I won't mention since these have already been discussed. The theoretical chapter is excessive. Some of the this is, for example, on page 46, the author describes the structure of political risks. That includes source of risk, such as unstable political situations, risk factors, and risk object, as well as with political and in the individual political organizations and consequences such as revolutions, change of the ruling class, social. But in the empirical part, no illustrations of this provision can be found. Novelty is described in 5 propositions, which is excessive because some of the mentioned above could be moved to the tasks of the study, and the thesis of that political manipulation affects the information political security. The thesis would get more scope and significance if the annex material would be confirmed with empirical study that would enable to understand the nature of risks forming the information political threats of Russia. That could be the foundation for another thesis, which demonstrates its significance, the significance of this sphere. Also, I would like to say that the annex has individual value and is not simply an overview of literature. Each covers all the approaches to this issue of manipulative potential, and indeed it represents an excellent platform for action, not only for understanding of what is happening, but to accept. It's not only for consideration but also for action. These critical remarks do not affect the overall positive opinion and the work of Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich on political manipulation. The internet space corresponds to the main requirements set by the order on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, and the degree applicant deserves to be awarded the degree of candidate of political sciences, specialty 23002, political institutions, processes and technologies. Articles 9-11 of the above mentioned order has not been violated. Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you for your valuable review and comments. I agree with your comment about the redundancy in the novelty section. A part could be moved to research objectives. Materials of the appendix could be expanded and become the basis for continuation of the research in this topic. Once again, thank you very much for your valuable recommendations, Galina Sergeyevna. We can continue, of course. It's possible to find, but that is a lot of work, not only mind work, but other scholars as well. The topic is relevant, is of state priority. So thank you very much for your critical reviews, critical remarks. Thank you. Now let's give the floor to the next reviewer, Alevtina Vladimirovna. It's your turn, please. Dear colleagues, first I would like to mention the novelty. I only met the author today, and I saw that I was right, that he is not a political scientist. He comes from a neighboring sphere, which takes us to this interdisciplinarity which is necessary to ensure relevance to the work. Dear Viktor Vladimirovich, he is a technician because his structures that he proposed, they go beyond the traditional scope of our political views, which explains novelty and original nature of his work. Let me once again mention originality, but what is also important is that the author uses, out of a great scope of threats to be seen today to the political sovereignty, he chose the most important one, is the risk margin in the sphere of protection of political sovereignty, in which it takes into account external, internal threats and the application of power inside and outside this country. In his work, as was mentioned by my colleagues already, there are many interesting findings of theoretical and methodological nature, but not all the results are equally valuable, which allow us to say that the author has some potential and it can be used for further development. But in my opinion, the practical part of the thesis is stronger compared with the first chapter, where political science is weaker compared with other approach. But the second chapter looks very interesting because it includes methodology and the methods of the national state, especially in the paragraph on and of the author is quite high. The logic is quite and as is novelty. This author uses in the sphere of political the risk-oriented approach, and the basis of case analysis demonstrates the risk as non-linear techniques. Here, there's another successful use of modeling scenario with the help of counteraction to political threats on the internet. In the first chapter, I review as preparation for scientific tasks, which is also set in chapter 2. Here, the conclusions are of interest obtained when assessing the manipulation potential of the internet resources in Article 4, and in paragraph 2.1, the use of structural defeat, vulnerability of the political system in paragraph 2.2, the impact of critical elements of the political structure of the Russian Federation defined there. The novelty of the author's approach and convergence of interdisciplinary knowledge when creating scenario modeling of the impact, considering the information factor in development of the threat. This is a very useful recommendation for practical structures actually involved in information security. The essence of the technology is described by the author in detail in his previous articles that are always of interest to the experts, especially at our departments. The method of scenario modeling of political threats can counteract these threats in several formats. Here we have 4 main models, but the author suggests such transformer modeling when the use of logistics. In the adaptive model, we can create new managing centers and work towards the new goals. Novelty of this study is shown in paragraph 2.2, where the own mechanism, the algorithm of monitoring and adaptation to new variables, which is also in practice we are using that, and we can assess that. It's not always used and not always as practitioners. So this thesis provides some very good recommendations. So the counteraction to the threats on the internet instruments with special of improving the legal measures. So here maybe I'm not exactly, the practical significance of these theses is obvious. The validity of the results is yet I would like to provide some recommendations to the author. Speaking of the future threat, this is present rather than the specific category. The author operates universal nature of the factors, but in the political system, especially in the political sphere, where it has some specific features of the political system, where the author would like to aim is in order for this thesis. It's important that the author attempts to use the category of risks as the basic category, but the explanatory part of risk in the system of political security requires additional clarification or maybe further development, because the definition of risk itself as a threat to the actors is in risk management one of the first researchers of information secretary, Alexander Poznikov, and in addition the assessment of the information uncertainty doesn't make this definition more personal, and so it's necessary to provide more arguments. So it's the novel, manipulative, of destructive of human consciousness. So how is this novelty defined? It's necessary to provide additional explanation. At the same time, my critical remarks and comments leave the positive impression and sufficient scientific potential of the author to continue his work in this practically relevant field. The author, by Viktor Vladimirovich Borschenko, is a complete scientific study performed on a fairly high information level, and it corresponds to the aspect of scientific specialty. 23002 has practical value for the practice of political science. The thesis and political the threat on the internet space corresponds to the main requirements set by the order of the university, and the degree applicant Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich deserves to be awarded the degree of political Article 11 of the above mentioned order has not been violated. Thank you. Thank you very much, Natalia. Yes. Occasionally our dear Dr. Simons disappears. We are glad to see you again, Dr. Simons. Thank you once again, Natalia Alexeyevna, for your review and comments. Alevtina Vladimirovna, excuse me. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it's hard. Dear Alevtina Vladimirovna, thank you for your review and remarks. In my research, I adhere to the following definition of the concept: risk is a probability of a possible undesirable loss of something under a favorable set of circumstances. Risk is the probability of a dangerous factor getting out of control and severe consequences expressed by the degree of manifestation. In this case, the concept was considered in relation to the information political space. As for the manipulative techniques, there may be an inexhaustible multitude of them. We have described only the typical techniques, and I plan to continue my study of this problem. Thank you very much for your review, for your suggestions, for your comments, and this work is extremely important. So thank you very much. Thank you. At that, so we can proceed to my review, the last one. As I said already, we all saw the reviews at the website, so maybe the relevance of political manipulation has always existed. If we think the death of Socrates, it shows that political manipulations existed already in those recent years. In those years, today, because of the internet, the probability became higher. That is why I will not talk about all the positive traits of your thesis, but I will move to the critical remarks that I consider necessary so that you could focus more on this topic in the future. First of all, when you set the target it should be set more clearly. Your definition is too wide. You say that you intend to form the theoretical foundations and the methods of counteraction, etc. So one gets the impression that you personally, the first person to suggest all these methods, and this has never happened, though your first chapter is completely dedicated to discussion of these methods. Second, in the introduction, where you characterize the study methods, you never mentioned the synergy method, though in the thesis itself this method is discussed as one of the key methods to study the information space of the internet. Indeed, this is one of the most popular methods, not only in the political science but in other spheres as well. So it seems to me that you should pay more attention to that. Third, the provisions to be defended by definition should be structured so that they had as points for discussion. You want to defend, you want to discuss something that may evoke doubt or raise questions, but your provisions are pure declarations. Fourth, novelty of the thesis indeed is defined very widely and not clearly. If I remember, it includes 9 or 10 points, and some points do not coincide with the concept of novelty. For example, you insist that the complex problem is this was said by my colleagues, I will not repeat that. So here maybe there's something to work. You've got something to work on. And finally, what surprised me, and Alevtina Vladimirovna also noticed that in her question, there's some doubt when you claim in conclusion that you own a legal definition of new terms connected with the information and political security, and defining the borders of jurisdiction in relations connected with the use of the internet abroad, page 156. So I would like you to explain these provisions, these statements, but let me agree with the previous speakers that the thesis indeed is very interesting, and it reflects the need, the position of our state and of our society in its fight with the emerging threats. So these critical remarks are recommendations and points for discussion. They do not affect the overall positive assessment of the thesis. So the thesis by Borschenko, Political Manipulation on the Internet as a Threat to the Information Security, corresponds to the main requirements set by the order on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, and the applicant deserves the award of the degree of Candidate of Political Sciences in Specialty 230002, Political Institutions, Processes, and Clause 11 of the aforementioned order has not been violated by the author. Thank you. Thank you. I listened to you with great interest. I agree with your remarks. Natalia Alexeyevna, thank you. The legal definition is exclusively digital. It's clear that this is the function of the legislator. Of course, free researchers have no such authority, but we are talking about clarification of the meaning of existing terms and substantiating new definitions and introduction to scientific circulation in the future, maybe enshrining them in legislative acts. The final thesis on page 157, it's written that these definitions can be successfully used to improve the information legislation, as it's an important direction, since it's an important in the effectiveness of mechanical counteraction to information and political risks and threats. Obviously, this thesis should have been formulated more correctly. The new terms are not so much legally formalized as formulated using the legal practice. Of course, let me emphasize the Russian internet space is regulated by the legislative base of the Russian Federation, doctrines and security concepts which are presented and discussed in the study. And thank you again for your valuable observation. And we can continue working on that. So this is a very important issue. Thank you. I think, dear colleagues and dear council members, you're all satisfied with the answers. Simon, are you satisfied with the answers? The speeches, I don't see any guests. So we can, and we received no questions online. That is why let us move to the speech of the academic advisor, Igor Fyodorovich. Please tell us about the applicant and his work. Good evening, dear council members. I have 3 minutes, so I will not talk too much about this hard worker who got into this gray zone of information space where you can perish, but he managed to make, in my opinion, produce a serious paper. Viktor Vladimirovich has been working on this over 5 years. He published many papers on this topic, which was another. So he had another supervisor. He passed away. Igor Mikhailovich Lovkin passed away, and so there was a stop, maybe for a year. Our defendant didn't know where to go. He found where to find another supervisor. So I have been working not from the beginning, but the material has already been written, and some papers he has already published under my supervision. At the same time, he's so focused, he's so painstaking. They always went beyond the borders, which are hard to define, because the topic itself is such that you can touch anything, and in any chapter of the thesis. But at least the tests of his work of Viktor Vladimirovich, several times conducted at a conference we have every 2 years. The House of Scientists, the Russian Academy of Sciences, especially dedicated to information security, and in this section, at a section of this conference on information and psychological security, I would like to say that what's positive is ingrained to the applicant, is well organized. These are the features which characterize him as a real serious researcher. And thank you the reviewers, the members of the Dissertation Council who inspired him, meaning that his work is can be the foundation for further research. And one last point, I have another minute. The matter is that the problem of information security on the internet space, even though for many researchers is new, and at least in my opinion, this was included in a commission for development of the information safety of St. Petersburg. And tomorrow, on the 30th of June, we will report to the city government, because this was a task of the city government. So the information security is seen as communication channels. So we forgot the man. So the initiator, Victor, and including in this document the information security, the section on information psychological security, found support included in the document. So it shows that demonstrates the practical and theoretical significance. I heard your speeches and your valid critical remarks. So we just starting to enter this complex, let me say again, these processes in the gray zone. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are our colleagues willing to add anything? No? No? Okay. Then, at that, our discussion is over. Before we sum up and vote, let me ask the council members if the council members and the degree applicant have any questions or remarks regarding the procedure of today's meeting connected with online access mode. It's necessary I have to get answers from everybody. You have any comments? No remarks. Simon, do you have any? No. Let us move on to the next item of our agenda, to voting. It's 17:44 Moscow time. A question to the Dissertation Council members. Dear colleagues, before we vote, we have the opportunity to take a technical break to discuss the results of today's defense, and the sound shall be switched off. What do you think? Do we need such a technical break to discuss the results? No, I don't think we do. Do we need a break? Do you want to discuss? If the discussion is not necessary, let us continue our session and move on to voting. At that, the opinion of each council member on this issue shall be given in openly and individually. Let me ask the curator of today's event to provide the attendance list. Thank you. If we don't need a break to discuss the results, then we can move on to dear colleagues. I put the question of awarding to Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich the degree of Candidate of Political Sciences, specialty 230002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technology, to the open individual vote. Let me remind you that a decision of the Dissertation Council on awarding a degree shall be considered positive if more than a half, but not less than 3 council members present at this session, according to Article 23 of the Order. Well, Council Member Barandov Nikolai Alexeyevich, your opinion? I vote for awarding the degree of Candidate of Political Sciences. Thank you. Council Member Labush Nikolai Sergeyevich, I am for. Thank you. Council Member Melnik Galina Sergeyevna, I vote for awarding the degree Candidate of Political Sciences, Specialty 230002. Thank you. Council Member Shevchenko Alevtina Vladimirovna, I support the proposal and I vote for awarding the degree of Candidate of Political Sciences to Borschenko Viktor Vladimirovich. Council Member Gregory John Simons, your opinion, please.
I vote for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And me, Council Chairman, my opinion, I'm for awarding the degree. I'm for awarding the degree, the desired degree. Let us move on to counting the votes, and let me announce the vote results. Thus, dear Council members, let me inform you that out of 6 Council members, 6 Council members voted for, nobody voted against, and nobody abstained. A decision to award to Viktor Vladimirovich Borschenko the degree of Candidate of Political Sciences, Specialty 23002, Political Institutions, Processes and Technology, has been made. Now we would like to give the floor to the applicant for his closing remarks. Thank you. Dear Council members, thank you. Timely, you sent your reviews, so thank you very much again. It's a difficult day. It has been a difficult day, so I appreciate you coming. Thank you very much for giving such high assessment to my work, and especially thank you to Igor Fedorovich Kefeli. I said that I had another supervisor, Professor Lovkin, who unfortunately passed away. So please live long for the benefit of all the people, and other council members, please live long, stay healthy, especially when COVID, about which vaccine I wrote about only 10%. So please live long for the benefit of the others. Thank you for voting. You did something very good. Thank you. Thank you. We congratulate you. We congratulate you that you are now candidate of political sciences. And I declare the session closed. Thank you everybody for your participation. Please stop live broadcast.